Beneath the waves, they lie in silence. Colossal machines once hailed as unbreakable, now rusting relics scattered across the ocean floor. These were not small boats or forgotten vessels. They were giants. Some stretched longer than skyscrapers laid on their side. Some hauled millions of barrels, thousands of passengers, or whole economies across continents. And yet, they vanished. Swallowed by storms, torn apart by physics, or brought down by flaws no one saw coming, until it was far too late. There were no warnings, no distress calls, just silence. One moment, these giants ruled the sea. The next, they were gone. So what really happened to the world's biggest ships? And what secrets still lie buried in their wreckage? You probably think the Titanic was the biggest tragedy of its kind, but what if we told you there was a sister ship that was even bigger, sank faster, and was hidden in plain sight for over a century? The Britannic was designed to be the safe version of the Titanic. Engineers made her 18 inches wider and filled her with safety upgrades after the Titanic's disaster. She was enormous, 882 feet long, over 53,000 tons, and converted into a hospital ship during World War I. Her mission? To carry thousands of wounded soldiers across the Mediterranean, but she never got that far. On a calm, clear morning in 1916, Britannic entered the Key Channel near Greece. No enemy ships in sight. No reason to panic. But just after 8 o'clock a.m., something rocked the vessel. One massive explosion, and in less than an hour, the pride of the White Star Line was gone. Over 1,000 people were rescued, but 30 never made it, and for years, no one could agree on what really happened. Was it a torpedo? A sea mine? Something worse? A torpedo would have made it a war crime. A mine? A tragic accident. But eyewitnesses gave conflicting reports. Some claimed they saw torpedo trails. Others weren't sure, and with no clear evidence, the theories swirled. That's where modern tech comes in. Using sonar, submersibles, and 3D modeling, researchers drained the sea, digitally, and brought the Britannic back into the light. You get a full look at the wreck. Her bridge still intact, the massive bow tipped on its side, and nearly 1,000 feet away, all three house-sized propellers still standing proud. Unlike the Titanic, which split in two and crumpled on the descent, Britannic is almost untouched, frozen in time. But here's the wild part. While exploring the seabed half a mile from the wreck, divers discovered something small but telling. A dented, rust-covered object, just 3 feet wide. It matched the exact shape and size of a World War I-era German sea mine, right where the explosion was reported. That single piece of metal solved a century-old mystery. No torpedoes, no war crime, just a mine laid weeks earlier by a German U-boat. And Britannic, steaming right into it, sealed her fate in less than 55 minutes. That wreck changed maritime law forever. Shipbuilders realized that size wasn't safety. Just because something is huge doesn't mean it's indestructible. And that lesson would get tested again, but this time with something much, much bigger. The next wreck on our list didn't carry passengers, it carried oil, a lot of it. In fact, 1.6 million barrels. The Amako Kadis was one of the largest supertankers ever built, over 1,100 feet long. Single-hulled, built for speed and volume, and in 1978, she was sailing through the English Channel on her way to Rotterdam. Then things went sideways, literally. A Force 10 gale slammed the ship with 60-mile-per-hour winds and waves nearly 40 feet high. The rudder snapped, the steering failed, and for 12 hours the crew could do nothing as the wind pushed the tanker toward the rocky shores of Brittany, France. At 9:04 p.m., the ship struck the rocks and tore apart. The metal hull, only 1.5 inches thick, was no match for the impact. It cracked like an eggshell. All 44 crew members made it out alive, but the real tragedy had already begun. 220,000 tons of crude oil poured into the sea. It was the worst oil spill in history. The coastline of Brittany, famous for its beauty, was drenched in black sludge. Oil-covered birds washed ashore by the thousands. The cleanup cost over $200 million, and the wreck became the rallying cry for environmental reform. Years later, divers and sonar teams went back to find out why a ship that size collapsed so fast. What they found was stunning. The wreck was shredded. Giant cracks ran across the hull, compartments split wide open, and inside those cracks, the answer. The steel skin was just too thin. A massive tanker, nearly the size of the Empire State Building, laid on its side, built like it was disposable. All it took was a wave, a broken rudder, and the wrong coastline. the disaster sparked a change in law. New regulations called for double hull designs, an extra layer of steel to absorb damage and keep oil in, even if the outer shell cracks. It was a direct result of what happened to the Amako Kadis, but even that wasn't enough to stop the next tragedy. Just 2 years later, in 1980, another massive ship vanished, without warning, without a mayday, and without survivors. It was called the MV Derby Shire, a bulk carrier almost 1,000 feet long. 9 massive cargo holds, designed for strength, range, and endurance. This was a new breed of cargo ship, the kind you'd think would never fail. She could travel 10,000 miles non-stop. She could carry over 160,000 tons of ore. She was built with a reinforced double hull and cutting-edge design. And yet, she disappeared in the South China Sea. The wreckage wasn't found for nearly 2 decades. The Derby Shire left Canada in July, fully loaded and headed for Japan. 2 months later, she hit a typhoon. Then, nothing. Not a single distress call. No debris. No lifeboats. No bodies. All 44 people on board, gone. The biggest British ship ever lost at sea. For years, nobody knew where she went or why she sank. Shipwreck hunter David Mearns took on the impossible task of finding her. The China Sea is deep, over 2.5 miles, and no one knew exactly where she went down. The only clue was an oil slick, spotted in the days after she vanished. After 3 days of scanning the ocean floor, Mearns finally found something. A massive wall of steel loomed out of the darkness. It was the side of the Derby Shire, a gravesite nearly 16,000 feet below the surface. What they found was shocking. The bow, 160 feet wide, lay upright like it had been dropped straight down, but the rest of the ship obliterated. The hull was shattered into thousands of pieces and spread over half a square mile. It looked less like a wreck and more like the aftermath of an explosion. How does a ship that strong get torn apart like that? Investigators started piecing together the evidence. The bow was surrounded by open-air vents, covers ripped off, water poured in, and as the sea flooded the forward storage areas, the ship tilted downward, pulling the nose under. More water meant more weight. The deeper the bow sank, the more unstable the ship became. Then came the killer wave. Some reports suggest it was up to 90 feet tall. That wave smashed through hatch number 1 and filled the cargo hold in seconds. The extra weight dragged the Derby Shire down, fast. But it wasn't just the flooding that destroyed her. As she sank past 200 feet, the pressure built. A normal ship would crush inward, but the Derby Shire had 2 hulls, creating air pockets inside the void. That air compressed rapidly under pressure. Then, it exploded outward. This chain reaction is called implosion-explosion, and it's as violent as it sounds. The blast blew the Derby Shire apart from the inside, hurling debris across the seabed like a bomb had gone off. That's why the wreck is in thousands of pieces. The findings changed the industry. New rules were put in place for cargo ships. Stronger hatches, sealed air vents, warning systems, and they worked. Since these updates, bulk carrier losses have dropped by half, but the story doesn't stop there. By the early 2000s, cargo shipping had transformed again. This time it was all about containers, boxed freight, global logistics. Ships got even bigger, and one of those new giants was the El Faro. She was 800 feet long, carried 391 containers, nearly 300 cars and trailers, and a crew of 33. Her job? To move goods from Florida to Puerto Rico. But in 2015, she crossed paths with Hurricane Joaquin. Winds over 100 miles an hour, waves topping 40 feet. In the chaos of the storm, the El Faro went silent. She vanished, just like the Derby Shire, except this time investigators had a lead, a last known GPS position. Using sonar, they searched the seafloor, and 3 miles down, they found it. The ship was upright, almost intact, sitting in a crater of disturbed sediment. Dozens of containers surrounded her, a floating warehouse lost to the deep. What happened? The answer came from a small device the size of a basketball, the ship's VDR, or Voyage Data Recorder. Like a black box on a plane, it recorded calls, engine data, and movement. When it was recovered, it revealed everything. Hold number 3 had started flooding. A scuttle, a hatch between decks, let water pour in. The El Faro listed 18 degrees. That tilted angle let more water rush into lower decks. Loose cars slammed into pipes and broke water lines. The crew didn't see the full danger, and within minutes, they lost power. Then came the order to abandon ship, but it was already too late. None of the lifeboats launched. No one survived. The disaster forced a hard look at how modern cargo ships are operated and maintained. It proved that even with high-tech navigation and steel reinforcements, nature still wins. And it reminded everyone that even today, ships can disappear just like they did a century ago. If you want more stories like this one, real history, real stakes, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next.